Good morning. It's going to surprise you guys a lot, but because of the fact that I've been studying the Christmas stories, I'm going to do this message completely different than I've ever done it before. About 10 seconds ago, I was sitting down there with my wife thinking to myself, who was the moron who came up with this idea? Because I am not feeling calm. My stress level is quite high, and you'll find out in a second. No, but you are, Dave. As I looked through the Christmas story, especially last week and this week, what I noticed was what the Bible said seemed to be this big, and what my tradition told me the Bible said was this big. My tradition said the Bible only talks about this stuff in this way, and this is what matters. And then when I read the Bible, I'm like, okay, but what about this part? And but what about this part? And it's got me thinking, how much of our spiritual journey sits outside of the tradition that we maybe grew up with, or we learned from The Simpsons, the great church of The Simpsons. Just so you know, those guys are spot on. Anyways, that's fine. How much of our spirituality sits outside of that? And how much are we willing to admit to those around that it sits outside of that? Growing up, I just realized I have never told this in public. Whoever created this message was an idiot. When I was a kid, southern Manitoba, we lived on an acreage. I remember in my bedroom, my bed was kind of this way, my brother was over here. And I would oftentimes lay in my bed and I would look up and I'd see the roof of my bedroom. And then it was like all of a sudden something happened and my perception shifted and I'd be looking down on myself. I didn't know what was going on. But it was like I could see myself, my body down there, and I was up here. And at first it was really cool because I could fly. I could go really far away from my body and I could see the world. I could see my town. I could see all these things. But then every once in a while, well, actually every time, I started to get nervous because my body's down there and I'm up here. I didn't know what this meant. I didn't know what was going on. But it freaked me out because I couldn't always get back. That fear turned into something else, turned into judgment. My traditions never talked about things like this, only maybe in a very tangential way. But it was always talked about as bad or evil. And I was scared, like petrified. And so evil and petrified, they went together beautifully. I know sometimes I'd lay in my bed and I'd like hold on to the covers and be like, don't let it happen tonight. I don't want that. I never told anyone about it. I was scared. I was pretty sure I didn't know what this was, but I had a sense that this was not for public knowledge. I never told my parents. I never told my brother who was sleeping 10 feet away from me. I never told my pastor or any leader in my church. I hid it for 50 years. Oh, even now as I talk about it, I can feel there's a part of me that's like, you don't talk about this in public, Clausen. I was sitting with a counselor who was trained in an Eastern tradition of spirituality. And I was trying to work through my wounds and my stuff, and I don't remember even how it came up, but I said, well, I kind of had this experience, and I kind of, super light. I didn't know if I should talk about this. I didn't know what it meant. And she was like, oh, you're astral projecting. I was like, sorry, what? What? I have a part that is very well trained in my tradition. It doesn't like the word astral projection at all. Like at all. It's like, sorry, what did you just say, lady? For whatever reason, probably because she's very skillful, I didn't get overwhelmed by that part. And I was able to ask, what do you mean by that? She said, do you ever feel like you kind of separate from your body and you can look down on it? And I'm like, yeah. I said, it scares the crap out of me because I can't get back. And then she said something so important that still, I can hear it. I call her the white witch because she's like witchy and she's awesome. So she's not a dark witch, she's a white witch. But she looked at me, she pinned me down and she said, wait, no one ever taught you how to get back to your body? Of course no one taught me that. Because we don't ever admit that it's going on. And I'm pretty sure my tradition thinks this is evil. So of course no one taught me. 5 minutes later, she's taught me. I'm like, I could have used that when I was 6 years old, scared shitless in my bed. She's like, oh, you just do it this way. And I'm like, and then I realized when I read through the Bible, I hear stories of people doing this all the time. Jacob, he's like, I was sleeping. And then I saw this whole scene play out, and I was like, I know that. Was he astral projecting? I don't know. What is astral projection? I don't really know. But I know that that part of my spirituality was so tainted by fear and judgment that I hid it for 50 years. It could have been something beautiful. Spiritual people often use it to find the connection to the whole world. Because you can kind of fly over the world and see everyone, and it's this beautiful moment. For me, it was just fear and evil. How much of the traditions we grew up with leave out parts of our spirituality that the Bible seems fairly comfortable with? Now, I'm not here to try and break anything for you. If you have a spirituality that fits down the center of your tradition, that's wicked. But I've had enough conversations with enough of you who are kind of doing this like, I can tell you want to tell me something, but you're pretty sure that because I'm a pastor, I'm not going to like it. You're like, I do. Reiki. It's always in this whispered tone. I believe in my spirit, my ancestors, and I talk to them. Back in the day, it was, I do yoga. Whispers, right? We think there's a tradition right here down the center, and there's these things outside of it that don't fit. I want to talk to you today to show you that they actually do fit. The Bible stories are way broader than our traditions that I grew up with anyways. And so today I want to share with you three stories. Three stories that fit well outside of most of our traditions. But they're all from the Bible, so you're going to have to deal with that. And the reason I wore a hat today is because I am actually going to use a tradition from the Bible. You're going to hear about it, called divination. You can see my bias here. You use chance to find guidance from something more. So, I have 3 parts of my message here. I'm going to put them in my hat. I'm going to ask somebody to come up and pick out what part of the message, or what the order of the message is going to be. So you're going to pick out a hat, and I'm going to do that part of the message. This could turn out beautifully, and the divine will guide it, and my message will be awesome. If it does not go well, it's also the divine's fault, and I'm not taking no responsibility. Right now, again, I'm thinking to myself, I like a little more control than this, actually. But I want to do it as a way to show you how our tradition brings in things, let me say it this way, how the Bible brings in things that our tradition doesn't have. So can I get a volunteer to come up? Do you mind coming up? You're going to pick really good, because there's an order that I want this in. So if you could pick it in that order, that'd be great. Thanks, Daniel. Jonah. That's the one I wanted. Okay, there's a story of Jonah. Oh, I'm so excited about this. There's a story about Jonah. Jonah is this character. It's my character, because the character God in the story says to Jonah, I want you to go this way and do something good. And Jonah goes this way to run away. And I'm like, hello, my life. But there's a part of this story. So the character God says to Jonah, I want you to go to Nineveh. He's like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go to Tarshish. So he hops on a boat. Bunch of sailors, bunch of people, hops in a boat, heads down to the bottom, has a nap. A storm blows up. Now, a storm for us means a meteorological phenomenon where, the Alberta Clipper or whatever happens with the Chinooki thing, and we get tons of snow. That's what a storm means to us. This day and age, that's not what a storm means. A storm means their conception of God is angry. So here's what they do. The sailors are like freaking out, like, we're going to die on this thing. Jonah's still at the bottom. They call everyone up and they're like, okay, who pissed off God and which God did you piss off? But they don't know. So what they do is they take straws, like 20 people, 19 long straws, one short straw. And they go around and say, okay, everyone pick a straw. Gets to Jonah, he pulls the short straw. And they're like, okay, so which God do you believe in? He says, we translate it. It's the Tetragrammaton. Certain traditions don't pronounce it. We do. It's Yahweh. If you're German, it's Jehovah. Same pronunciation, same word. He says, Yahweh. I was supposed to go that way. I ran away going this way. Yahweh's angry. You need to throw me over the edge of the boat. The sailors are like, so you want us to kill you? We're not into that. So they started to row harder to try to get to land, to try and get to safety. And after a while, they're like, this is not going to work. We're all going to die unless we deal with this. And so they say, okay, to whoever gods are going to get angry, please forgive us. And they take Jonah, they throw him overboard. The storm stops like that. Here's the part of the story I want you to pay attention to. They draw straws to figure out what's going on, and the straws are right. How many of us use divination to figure out what our conception of God? Nice, we got it. I have not used this, although that's not actually true. Anyone grown up with this idea of you pray to get guidance from whatever conception of God you have? Anyone have this idea that says when a door opens, right, another one closes, it's a sign? Isn't that kind of the same idea? You're not using straws, but you're using physical things to figure out spiritual things. How many of you would go into a church today and admit that you use divination? Nice. I would not. I'd be like, yeah, we're going to hide that one over there. Who took a hat on stage and had them pick the order of the service? That's crazy. I'd never do that. Part of our tradition, let me say it this way. If your tradition is this way, can you see how the Bible is wider than that? The question I want to ask, and I want you to keep in your mind through this whole message is, what part of your spirituality have you kept hidden because it doesn't fit the tradition? Okay, Daniel, you picked beautifully. I'd like to have you pick again, but I'm going to let someone else pick. Can I get someone else to come up? Dave, you were the one who wanted me to sing, so you're up, dude. Hey, I got the mic. That's how it works. Okay, pick good though, okay? Pick good. Okay, thanks, man. Hagar. Oh, yes. Actually, no, we need to do the other one first, but it's okay. I can make this work. I can totally make this one work. Let me just think for a second. Okay, story of Hagar. Hagar. Yes, it's meant to be. Who meant this to be, I'm not sure, but Hagar. Okay, Hagar is a slave. There's a person named Abraham and his wife named Sarah. They're trying to have a kid. This era, that's their life. They want kids. They want people to come after them. And oftentimes in these stories, the story's about not being able to get pregnant. This is horrible for them. Abe and Sarah can't get pregnant. One day she sits down to Abe and she's like, yeah, it's not working. I wonder if they're blaming each other. I never figured that out. I think she's assuming it's her. Because she says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you my maidservant, and you're going to sleep with her, and we're going to raise that kid like one of ours. My brain wants to make this a polyamorous relationship that's beautiful. It's more Handmaid's Tale than that. So this is weird. Consent, we're just going to put consent over there and pretend we're not talking about that. They have a child. Hagar and Abraham have a child, and the child starts to grow up, and everyone's happy until, of course, Sarah somehow out of nowhere gets pregnant. And Sarah gets jealous. Well, which kid's most important? Your firstborn or your child with me? This gets escalated and escalated, and finally, Sarah convinces Abe to kick Hagar out of the house. This house is not like our house where you can go to a shelter, where you can, get some support. Think of it like a nomadic group that lives in the middle of the wilderness. Sending her out of the camp means she's going to die because there's nothing out there. And so we have this moment of jealousy that creates this moment of, I don't even know what kind of word you would call it, but the one wife tries to kill the other one. And so Hagar is out in the wilderness, and she has her son. His name is Ishmael. She takes Ishmael and she puts him far away, and then she goes and stands far away because she's like, I literally can't watch him die. I can't be watching him die. So Hagar, who's a pagan, is very clear she's an Egyptian. She's not part of the tradition that Abraham and Sarah are from. She's in the wilderness, her son's over there dying, and she just looks up to the heavens and says, help. Can you throw up the line for me? This is what the character God in the story says. Come, Hagar the pagan. Lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand. For I will make of him a great nation. This is one of the core blessing stories of our tradition. Why am I telling you? Because Ishmael is considered the founder of the Islamic religion. Islam, from this story, is blessed, is growing, is healthy, because the conception of God from the Bible says, I will make it so. Our tradition stories say, at the beginning was Judaism, that split to Christianity and then split a bajillion times after that, and it also split to Islam. And all of that is blessed by the story's conception of God. How many of you have seen Islam as part of our tradition? All those Christians against Islam, movements. It's not me talking here, it's the Bible, folks. You see, our traditions are like, no, Christianity is like this. And then you read the Bible and you're like, how many of us use meditation? How many of us use letting go of things that cause or expectations, Buddhism, to deal with suffering? How many of us are guided by something more that we're like, well, I'm not sure what it is. It could be my mom who passed away 10 years ago. I go to this resort, me and my wife, to recharge. I don't know if it's thematically Hindu, but they got Hindu statues all over the place with little plaques. And as I'm walking to the gym, I walk by all these little statues. It's like, this is the God of whatever. And it's like, this is the God of prosperity and joy and suffering. And I stop at each statue and I have a moment and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get in touch with that piece of my tradition through Hinduism. I told you today I was going to show you the Bible tradition is much bigger than our tradition. I think it holds inside of it religion as a whole. So how many, don't put up your hand, but how many of us use other traditions, bits and pieces of other traditions, to help us because they work? And how many of us wouldn't admit that to the... Well, I can't say that. And yet, the story of Hagar. Okay, last story. This one I get to pick. This is the one my team mocked me about the most. It says on here, Magoi. Can you throw up the piece for me? This is the Christmas story. This is how I got to this whole piece. Yeah, the band's going to come up because they're going to play a little bit more. This term here, Magoi, it's translated wise men or kings. Yeah, it's not good translations. We'll deal with that in a second. So the Magoi from the east came to Jerusalem asking, where is the child who has been born king of the Jews? Anyone know this version of the Christmas story? There's four versions of life of Jesus. Two of them have birth narratives. They're both different. This one's not in that one's not in this one. This is part 2. We have the birth part. This is the second part. So, where's the child who's been born king of the Jews? King of the Jews, please hear this literally, not metaphorically. A king of this group. For we observe the star in the east and have come to pay him homage. They replied, in Bethlehem of Judah. So the Magi set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen in the east until it stopped over a place where the child was. On entering the house, they saw the child Jesus with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then opening up their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Okay. You guys all heard We Three Kings. So you heard the tradition's interpretation of this story. Let me widen it out for you a little bit. The reason I use Magoi is that's one of the most important words in this whole story. And this is the core of this whole message. Magoi, often we translate it magus or magi. Probably the closest English translation would be an astrologer. Somebody who sees signs in the world. In fact, they were trained to see signs in the world as markers of something else going on. Isn't that an astrologer? Kind of straight up, isn't it? Most likely they were Zoroastrian, which means when it says from the east, it actually says from where the sun comes up. That's the tradition in the front. They are not Jewish. They are not proto-Christian. There's no Christian yet in this time and era, but let's just say there's no Christian. These are pagan astrologers who are using a system that is not part of our tradition to figure out that a new king is born. So oftentimes they follow a star. They don't actually at the beginning. They find a star, they find a sign, and they say, hey, a new king of the Jews. So where would the new king be? Well, probably at the capital city. So they take a camel. I don't actually know what they ride. They go to the capital city and they're like, hey, we saw a sign for a new king. They don't know where the king is, but they know there is a king. This is not king in a spiritual sense. This is king in a political sense. That's why they go to the core of the political group. We're looking for a king. Herod's the king. Herod says, I have no children. Well, that's awkward, isn't it? Also, Herod's reign is a bit tenuous, and his lineage to get to kingdom is a bit iffy. And so them coming and saying, hey, we're looking for a new king. Did you have a child? Herod's not happy about this. So what they do instead is they go to Bethlehem. Now then suddenly a star shows up and they take it to Bethlehem. Magoi is the plural of magi. We don't know if there's 2, 50, 600. Pastors through the ages have changed the story significantly. I think they got bored at Christmas. And so they started doing some fan fiction here. We have now 3 kings. Well, first there's 3. Then they called them kings. That started happening about the 3rd century. We don't know why they changed it to kings. There's no translation of that word that means kings. We think that maybe they're trying to make it fit some other part of their tradition. They made it up. Then they gave them names. They made it a number 3. All of it is our tradition. But what are we seeing underneath all that? Astrologers, pagan astrologers, written into the Christian story. Did the author we call Matthew need to write pagan astrologers into that story? We don't think so. Luke doesn't seem interested in that. But Matthew seems profoundly interested in showing a bunch of pagan scholars finding signs in the stars that foretell a political event. When they show up, they treat Jesus like a king. The translation often is, they'll use the word Messiah. Yes, anointed one can be Messiah, but it's misleading. We think of it as a religious title. It can also mean a political title. Anointed one. The kings were anointed. Pagans using pagan systems to find the political story of the birth of Jesus. Did anyone's tradition teach them that? The Bible is much wider than any tradition I grew up with. What in our spiritual lives are more consistent with astrologers and all of that stuff than the tradition that says there's 3 kings? They came to worship Jesus because he's the Messiah. It's a religious thing. They convert kind of, but maybe not. Basically, they're saying Christianity is more important than our religion, right? These are all the stories that we grew up with. That's not in the text. More than one, Magoi is plural, more than one, that's all we know, used pagan divination to find what they think is the king. And they pay him homage like a king. I'm going to have the band play We Three Kings once more, and I want you to just pay attention to how much of this story has been added by a tradition. My goal today was not to try and break something for you. My goal was to give you freedom. This is what Church on the Ledge means. It means that a single tradition doesn't limit us. We all explore our spirituality in the widest understanding of that term. We've seen that our traditions might be here, but the biblical tradition is much wider than that. We have divination, we have astrologers, we have different religions, all part of the stories. And just like last week I said, what if the shepherds represented this part of ourselves that we've exiled, that we've outcast, we've put over here? What if that's invited back into our story today? So too today, I'm asking, what part of your spirituality is meaningful, is life-changing, important, that you haven't let it be part of this? Like me, you hid it. It's over there. I don't talk about it here. What if today we let the Bible invite us to call that part of ourselves back in and make our Christmas, Church on the Ledge Christmas, one that has arms as wide as each and every person here today? May you be the fullest expression of your spiritual self. And may you know that it's welcome here today. Amen? Thanks, everybody.